Today, we are going to talk about the traffic and how to use traffic to implement routing in your microservice architectures. So just this is what we are going to go through over, let's say, an hour. Just briefly, who am I and why I'm talking to you? My name is Jakub Hajek and I'm based in Warsaw in Poland. And I'm very glad that you have invited me here. And I'm a technical consultant working for my own company called Canary. You can find me at Twitter. This is my link. I'm also a traffic ambassador. I did a few talks about the traffic, and I'm a sysadmin since a couple of years. And I like to work in the old-fashioned way. And I remember when there were no any tools like automation tools to make our life, our daily duties easier, and we did everything manually. Currently, we have such a great tools. And what is a commentary? So we are a solution company. We are implementing a DevOps culture, DevOps strategy to different organizations, to different companies, especially for travel tech companies that are now a little bit suffering through COVID. But we are still working with them and trying to support them. And our expertise, it's as I mentioned, DevOps, SRE, and Elastic Stack, because we are doing a lot of projects around Elastic Stack. We developed our own tools on Elastic Stack, mostly for time-based log, just to provide log analysis. So what's the aim of my presentation is to show you how you can use traffic, how you can easily install traffic to publish your services in your microservice architectures. So the agenda is following that I will present you a few slides, just a theory. What is the traffic for those who are not familiar with the tool? What you can do with this tool, what you can expect from this tool, what are the features, what are also the features from Traefik EE, because there is also enterprise edition, just the 2 slides, but we'll focus on the open source version. And then I will show you presentation of how to deploy traffic on the Kubernetes environment. I will use K3s, that is a lightweight version of Kubernetes. And I will try to do Canary deployment. Hopefully everything should work. It will be live, so hopefully, as I mentioned, everything should work correctly. So the question, if you are working with a distributed environment, if you have many containers, many applications deployed, we can ask the question, where is the service? How I can easily expose the service to my users. So in the past, I personally use HashiCorp tools when I had to create templates and on Nginx in Jinja that was automatically reloaded in case of if there are any new containers, any new backends running. So it was a quite annoying, and it was of course complex because I had to do it manually or even write my own YAML files. Currently, we have a traffic, and for those who are not familiar with the tool, what is it? Traffic? It's a cloud native edge router. So this is something that you can install on top of your infrastructure, and it's a kind of a reverse proxy. So it can take the incoming request. It can be HTTP, it can be TCP or any other UDP gRPC in the newest version of Traefik, and you can easily redirect incoming requests to your infrastructure. So this is the very simple diagram. So on the left side, we have the traffic, incoming requests, and traffic can expose entry points. In our naming, it might be HTTP or HTTPS or any other port. Then we have a router, and on the router we can define middlewares, and you can define many middlewares. I will talk a little bit later what are the middlewares, what are the advantages of that. Just basically speaking, you can tweak your HTTP request and response, so you can add some extras to your request. It's a very nice feature, especially that you will be able to code your own middlewares, because there are a bunch of middlewares already designed, but you will be able in the newest version code your own middlewares. And from the right side, we have a service, and a service can redirect directly to our backend servers, I mean to our containers. So this is how it works right now. So very easy, straightforward diagram. What I would like you to remember for that slide, the Traefik, it's not the web server, because it's just a router. It cannot serve the content. You can use Nginx or any other web server. It's just a simple router that has been designed for working with a very modern cluster orchestration tools. So what are the key features of Traefik? So I started to work with Traefik with a version 1.4, something like that. So it was a year ago, or even 2 years ago. Currently, we have a version 2 that provides much more new features. And the very important thing from that is that it can easily discover the new services. You don't have to write your configuration manually. You can just install the Traefik, configure it with your cluster orchestration tools, and it will automatically discover what is your infrastructure, how many services you defined, and how many containers you have in your backend. So if you have a 3, 4, or even more, or you can scale it up because on demand, because of the traffic, it will automatically add the new containers to the pool. So it's dynamic. You don't have to write your configuration manually. So that's very nice. It also has a tracing feature, so you can trace your feature, trace your request to see how traffic looks like. So you can use a Jagger, you can use a Zipkin to trace your request. There is also metrics available, so you can use the open metrics format and expose the metrics and then create nice diagrams in Prometheus, Grafana, whatever you like it. It already has integrated Let's Encrypt, so you don't have to install anything external infrastructure to get the SSL certificates, because everything will be done on Traefik automatically, and it just works. So in case of your certificate is going to be expired, so Traefik will automatically contact staging production environment and get the new certificate for you. As I mentioned, also it works for HTTP, but from the version 2 it can works also for TCP, UDP, and gRPC protocols. And middlewares, this is something that you can use to tweak your HTTP requests. What are the features in 2.x, in the newest version that has been released in December? So there are some changes in the names, because in the version 1 you had front-end, you had backend, and you had rules. Currently we have a router, we have a service, and we have a middleware. This is the naming that we should use right now, and this is what I recommend you if you are going to play with Traefik. Let's focus on the version 2. Version 1 is still supported, but of course it's better to use the newest version and be up to date with the features that are going to be developed by the team, by the owner of the Traefik. In version 2, there is also a integration of the Kubernetes CRD. So we have a custom resources, custom objects. I will go through it later on, and you can use those objects to create routing, to create services, and everything what is related to configure Traefik. So that's a nice feature that you don't have to work with a standard ingress. You can use a custom resource and define your own object. So that's nice feature. What I also like from Traefik, it's a dashboard. Of course, we are engineers. We like code. We like YAML or whatever you like it. But it's nice to have a dashboard that can show you how your configuration looks like. You can show that dashboard to your CEO, to your C-level management, and it looks very nice, and it's even helpful to very easily troubleshooting of your configuration, because it can show you how your what is the routing, what is the service, what middlewares you have assigned to your routers. In the newest version, there is also a Canary deployment feature that can be achieved by service load balancer. So we have two services, and we can balance requests, incoming requests between two services. It works very nice. Hopefully, I will be able to present it today. Network traffic. So it's you can create a new service in your infrastructure, and you can route the traffic to that service, but there will not be response sent back to user. So in case of any problems with your new service that you just deployed and released, your users will not be affected. So it's a nice feature to test new versions of your applications. And of course, session stickiness. So you can, if you would like to, if you don't want to use round robin because you have many services, many services running, you can use a round robin or any other protocol to redirect traffic requests between containers, but you can also use a stickiness to be redirected to the same container, to the same backend all the time. So 2 slides about the enterprise version, just to mention that there is a possibility to have enterprise edition that is clustered by default. It's fault tolerant. It has the features to distribute SSLs and middlewares, because in version open source, you need to, it's a little difficult to have a distributed SSLs certificates, because the SSL certificates have to be stored on the storage. In my example, I use PVC from Kubernetes to store my SSL certificates. So it's a little bit difficult to scale it up. In Enterprise Edition, it's already supported and already delivered the high availability, and you can easily scale up the horizontally and traffic. And of course, it's supported. Basically speaking, this is the high-level architecture. So we have a proxies and controllers, but in general, it looks very similar to the open source version, but they distinguish the controllers and proxies. If you are interested in EE, just drop me a message and I will happy to help you. What is the traffic configuration, how it looks like? So we have two types of the configurations. So it's a static configuration and it's dynamic configuration. So what is the static configuration? This is something that you, in order, if you'd like to change your static configuration, you need to restart traffic. Of course, traffic starts very quickly. It's a Go binary. It's one single file that starts very quickly, but of course it takes a time. And if you have a mission critical application, you should consider to when you can do that, or provide high availability, or create more, just to create more containers with traffic. So what are the configurations that are static? So the first of all is provider connection information. So it can be a Docker swarm, it can be a Kubernetes, it can be also a file, and the ports that you are going to expose. So those configuration parameters are static, cannot be changed dynamically. From the right side, you have everything that is dynamic. So once we create new domain, new URL, we can easily create routing for that domain. And the same we can easily get the certificate for the domain through the Let's Encrypt. The same can happen with the service. So we can create a new service, and everything that will be added, the backends that will be added to the service, it's also done automatically because of the automatic service discovery. And middlewares, you can create middlewares and dynamically assigned middlewares to your routers, because you can have one middleware that can be assigned to many routers. So it's worth to remember that there are two types of the configuration, and I will show you in a few seconds, in a few minutes, how it looks like. And middlewares, few things about the middlewares, a few words about the middlewares. So Just a brief overview. We have a bunch of the middlewares. There is a link in my presentation. You can have a look on it. But what I like the most, it's, let's say, circuit breaker. So in case of any problem with your backend, you can send your users to the fallback server. So you can create any page, sorry, we are down right now, or we are doing something, any maintenance. So everything can be redirected to the fallback server. Forward authentication, this is a nice feature because I like it. And you can create external authentication server using out, and you can protect your services using external service. Let's say if you are logged to the GitHub and you have a session set in GitHub, you can see you can be redirected in order to see the service, the website. So it's a nice feature that you can create in your organization, that everyone who is in our organization GitHub and it's successfully logged to the GitHub account can see the service. Otherwise, it will be returned 403 or any other HTTP response. So this is the example what you can do with a forward out. Automatic retries. So in case of the problem with your backend, something is happening in your backend, you can set how many retries you would like to have to send the request to the backend. Buffering, response compression. If you haven't implemented compression in HTTP, you can do that through the middlewares. And headers, you can add headers to the request and add headers to the response once the user get the response from your service. And this is actually what I will be using in my example. And CRD, as I mentioned, in the newest version, there is already CRD added, custom resource, available custom resources. So what are the resources that you can use it? So there are a few of them, and what that one that I highlighted in green, so you can use this like a kind in your configuration. So ingress route is responsible for routing, so it's just a HTTP router. Middleware, it's the name for the middleware. So if you define the middleware, you can tweak your HTTP requests before they are sent to a service. Traffic service, it's an abstraction layer for load balancing and mirroring. So we are using a traffic service to expose actually service and add to the load balancer. Ingress route TCP, it's the same for it's a routing for TCP services, and we are using that for example for Logstash when we have a TCP service, TCP protocol that is lumberjack, because Logstash use that protocol. TLS options, so you can tweak your TLS connection by adding extra parameters. So this is what you will see in a few minutes in my presentation. And a few words about so this is everything what I wanted to share about the traffic. So just what you should remember from my presentation right now, the traffic is an edge router. It can be easily integrated with Kubernetes, Docker Swarm, whatever you like it. The major cluster orchestration tools, you can even use it on your standard installation. If you don't use containers, you can install like Go binary directly on the host and create a manual configuration. If you have a very old environment and you cannot update it because of any reason. And now I would like to show you and talk a little bit about the Canary deployment and traffic mirroring. And if you are not familiar with what is it Canary deployment, there is the picture why we are using Canary deployment and what is it. So there is on the picture you can see coal miner who is keeping the canary in a cage, and the coal miners used canaries like in the 20th centuries, like an early warning in coal mines. So in case of any toxic gas that can be that you will be able to find in a coal mine, that the bird was distressed because of the toxic gas, especially a carbon monoxide, and it gives a time people to escape from the dangerous place. So this is exactly what we are doing right now with our environment. So we have a working environment, we have multiple services running, and we can install, we can deploy and release the newest version of our application and to see what's happening on that version. So we can test our new service, new microservice in live production environment. And we can see what's happening with the service. If we see that there are any problems, let's say our monitoring system reports, okay, there's more requests, more load generated by that service, you can easily roll back. So you can easily escape to the previous version. So thanks to the coal miners, now we have a Canary deployment. So actually they invited to save their life, and now we are using the same very similar approach to save also our lives once we are maintaining our environment. So what is the Canary deployment from the technical perspective? As I just briefly mentioned, it's just installing, really deploying and releasing the newest version of the application on production environment, because we would love to test our service in the real environment, not in the test environment that we have just 1-2 servers and it's not even coherent with a production environment. We would like to do on the production. That's why we can use a Canary deployment, but we need to distinguish what is it deployment versus release. So deployment, you can deploy many versions of your app, of your service on one environment, but the traffic can go to only to one version. If you decided, okay, I'm switching to the newest version, I'm releasing the application. And that process, it's a phased process, the phased approach. And this is actually the Canary deployment from the technical perspective. So you can just redirect a majority of your users to the version 1, and just only a few percentage of your user you can redirect to version 2. And you can test what's going on the version 2. If you don't see any problems, you haven't noticed any problems, you can move with your Canary deployment and replace the version 2. But in case of some problems that you notice, okay, something is happening wrong, we have a problem with our service, you can go back to the version 2. And in that case, the only a few users will be affected because of that problem. Of course, you can switch from version 2 to version 1 in one click, but all of your users will be affected. Of course, that example is from lab environment. If you have a complex application that is connected to the database, you have a CRUD operations, that's totally different story. I'm talking about the lab environment that you have a simple service that is stateless and there are no any extra modification with your database in the backend. Just to give you the high level understanding of Canary deployment and the features from that is coming from Traefik. So this is about the Canary deployment. Similar feature that I mentioned is the mirroring. So again, we are releasing the version of the newest. We are deploying the version of the newest service, but there are no traffic yet. Once we switch, we can see what's happening, but our users will not be affected because the response will not be sent back to the user. So you can have a 500 error because your application is not working correctly, your new service is not working correctly, but that response is not sent back to your user. So you can see in your monitoring tool, in your log management service, okay, there are 500s, okay, we have to fix it. So it's a nice feature that allows you to test your services in a real production environment. So this is how it looks like. You can redirect, let's say, 20% of your user to version 2, but in case of a problems of version 2, there will be no users will be affected. Yeah, so demo environment, what I'm going to show you, there will be a cluster running with on K3s with 3 nodes. There will be 2 domains that are already created, AirLabs, CLabs, commentary.eu. For those 2 domains, I've already issued thanks to the Traefik Let's Encrypt certificates. So they are already assigned. And yeah, I also use a DNS round robin for those 2 domains. So the cluster that is running on 3 nodes, 3 cheap VMs. If you go and check what is the IP address of one of this domain, you will see that every time you should receive a new IP address. It's thanks to the DNS round robin from Route 53 from AWS, the feature that you have, you can easily send the request to 1, 2, or to 3 nodes, depending of your DNS configuration, local DNS configuration. So of course, it's health checks are created. So in case of a problems with one of my node, everything should be so no user will be affected because DNS will be automatically updated. The cluster that I installed, it's just 2 commands that you have to run. If you would like to test on your own environment, I recommend you to use a parameter no deploy traffic, because the version that I used here installed the traffic 1.7, and you will not be able to see, you will not be able to test that feature that I'm just going to present you in a few minutes. So it's worth to remember that you can pass the parameter once you're installing K3s. So talk is cheap, show me the code. Famous quotation. Let me stop my presentation and switch to my Visual Studio. Hopefully you are still with me. Okay. So as I mentioned, because we use a CRD, you can use a GitHub from containers project, containers GitHub, and just download the configuration to create the custom resources. So this is what containers team, containers, that's the company that is behind the Traefik. They created a configuration to use specific custom resources. So I'm not going to focus on it. It just works, right? It's a separate namespace. It's airbag and specific resources. Let me focus on the configuration of Traefik. So what we have here, we have just a regular deployment. We are running the Traefik, and we are passing a parameter to standard configuration file. This is the one of the options that you can use to install and to configure Traefik. You can also use a CLI comments, like I just presented here, but I wanted to show you that you can still use the file, and that file can be edited in the standard way, old-fashioned way, or you can also use the CLI comments. It's all depends of you how you're going to maintain your configuration. Just an example. I will go through the configuration in a few seconds. Readiness and liveness check, because Traefik allows you to expose the ping. So it's a kind of a health check. So you can check whether Traefik is healthy or not healthy. So once it's not healthy, it will be automatically restarted thanks to those checks. So I recommend you to use the checks. Standard resource limitation for the container, ports that we are going to expose. So the ports for HTTP, HTTPS, and internal port for ping. And volumes. As I mentioned, we have to add configuration, 2 types of the configuration. The first is a static configuration that is running in the TOM file, and custom configuration that is running also in the YAML, but it's a separate file, and I will just show you. Once you edit those files, Traefik has a feature to automatically watch the changes in your file. And once you change it, it will be automatically gracefully restarted without affecting your users. So it's worth to remember that you can use that feature. Volumes for, as I mentioned earlier, we need to somewhere store our Let's Encrypt certificates. So we use a PVC here just to put the certificates here. And this is if you are going to use if you are going to scale Traefik horizontally, you need to deal with that, how to allow another instances to access that volume, because as you know, it will be running on one of the node of the cluster. And I use a constraint to install Traefik, to run the Traefik on one node. So in my example, you can say that's not high available environment. You are absolutely right, but you can, in open source version, you need to consider, if you are going to run multiple instances of Traefik, you have to consider, for example, to play with cert manager instead of using a built-in let's input version. If you are enterprise, think about the EE version. Standard config map for Traefik configuration and for the custom configuration. Yeah, node selector Traefik true, if that's what I just said. So we are running the Traefik on the node that has a flag Traefik true enabled. Service to expose the port, so nothing fancy, just a standard Kubernetes configuration. Okay, so let's go to the Traefik configuration. So here is the config map. So I created a few files. So Traefik toml, this is the configuration that is passed here. And what we are doing here, we are just exposing the entry points. We are setting the error level. We would like to have the logs in the JSON format. We would love to have a dashboard. Insecure true that we need to, because the dashboard can expose your entire configuration, and by default, you need to set insecure to true if you are not going to protect through basic authentication. So I disabled that feature because my dashboard is protected by basic authentication. So the ping comment that we are going to use for health check providers. So there are two providers, file provider, and there is a directory config.d that has a watch flag enabled to track the changes in files you are going to publish on your infrastructure. Kubernetes CRD, that's the second provider, metrics, and two certificate resolvers. So first, it's a certificate resolver for staging environment. Sorry, this is a staging environment, and the second is for production. So if you test your configuration, if you are not working on the production right now, you can use that provider, let's input staging, and you will not be blocked if you are sending too many bad requests to let's input servers. And the config map for custom config. So those are for custom configuration, and it's dynamically also updated. So you don't have to worry to bother yourself to restart, recycle traffic. So TLS configuration, this is just an example again. Maybe in production, you just tune it a little bit, tweak it a little bit. Two middlewares created, default headers and security headers. So again, this is just an example of my configuration to see that you can also create middleware here in files and also in Kubernetes configuration through the custom resource. So I will show in a second. Yeah, and now let's focus on the dashboard, how I expose dashboard. So this is the example when I use the first custom object from CRD. So I created the ingress route, and I use a matching rule, alabs.commentary.eu, and everything what it will be, and it's redirected internally to, actually this is a specific example because we are going to expose dashboard that is already in the Traefik binary. So this internal redirection to the service called API internal. So this is just an example how you can redirect into the internal service in Traefik. And the matching rule. So once you will send the request to your infrastructure with that HTTP host header, the Traefik will catch that request and redirect to that service. And you should see the dashboard because here on that dashboard, on that URL, we will have a dashboard. So I will show you in a second the dashboard. And as you can see here, I added the middleware that is called out and how it's created. First of all, I created a secret. It's a standard secret from Kubernetes. It's a encrypted password, username and password here. And I'm creating the middleware. Again, I'm using the CRD from that configuration, and I'm assigning the middleware out and the secret from admin out from that configuration. Another middleware that I'm going to create is automatic redirection from HTTP to HTTPS. So it's a permanent redirection. So once you use that name of your middleware redirect scheme, you will be easily redirected using that matching rule. So based on that regular expression, everything should be automatically redirected to HTTPS. And again, it's an internal service. That's why it's a little tricky, but it's, again, it's just an example. And ingress for metrics, because Traefik has your own endpoint for metrics, and I'm using two matching rules. So if Traefik will see HTTP host alabs commentary U and path metrics, it will redirect internally to the metrics. And of course, it's protected by Let's Encrypt and production and fully working certificate. So I think it's all about the configuration of Traefik. Let me show you the dashboard. Okay, so this is the dashboard. You can see, you can go and open the URL, so you will be able to see the same. The username is admin, the password is admin1234. And we have here 3 entry points. So this is the configuration that I just presented to you, but it's visualized here. And we have a HTTP configuration. There are no any TCP services created, but we can see that there are a few routers already defined. If you remember my previous my Visual Studio Code, this should be familiar to you. So alabs commentary EU, it's an internal service that is redirected to Kubernetes through the Kubernetes configuration. Those things are redirected to internally. It's an internal redirection, and the metrics. Let's see what are the services created. So internal services, just only internal services. There are no any extra service deployed yet. We will deploy it in a few seconds. Middlewares, so default headers that are coming from file, because that icon represent file. This is it comes from the Kubernetes configuration file. So this is how it looks like. Tracing is disabled, metrics are enabled, access log also are enabled, and 2 providers are configured. So this is the dashboard. Now let me go to Canary deployment, and hopefully everything should work correctly. So it will be a very simple example. So I will just run the simple application that it will be a Node.js server that will just print a few headers from the container. I created a separate namespace because it's a good practice to have a separate namespace for your new configuration. And standard deployment, the name is a web app v1 container, and it's my repository on Docker Hub, just a simple container with a version v1. It's running on the port 3000. I exposing the service, and I'm creating the ingress route for that server, for that service. So I'm just using the one matching rule that is using HTTP host header. And yeah, let me deploy it. We'll see what will change. Okay. Target nodes. Hopefully cluster is. I'm now on my local computer, but I'm using the specific configuration for kubectl to maintain the cluster that is running somewhere in internet. Let's go to Canary and let's deploy the first directory. Key apply -f. So objects have been created. Let's see what have been changed in configuration here. So the new service new routing has been created. It's called CLabs Commentary EU. The name of that service, the entry point is just only HTTPS. And let's go here to see. Okay, yeah, it's enabled. It uses load balancing between two servers. So let's go and to see, yeah, we have two servers. We can easily scale it up, and Traefik should automatically discover that there are new containers running. So let me try it. Scale, get deployments. Okay, so scale deployment web app v1 replicas 3. So it's scaled. We should see in a second that the new container is exposed here. Yes, there is a new container. So as you can see, the Traefik automatically discover that there is new container because I scale it up manually. And the traffic, incoming traffic, will be redirected to those two containers using the load balancing and WRR route robin, weighted route robin algorithm. Okay, so what's here in that? What we just deployed? Let's have a look on the website. So currently it's 404 because it's the previous. Let me refresh it. And we have an application that just display the headers from the inside from the container and the version v1. So now let's imagine if I will refresh, as you can see, I'm redirected to the different containers, and yeah, it works. So let's imagine right now that we prepared our developers prepared the newest version of the application, and we would love to deploy it and release it to our user. But we don't want to cut the traffic to v1 and switch to v2. We would like to do phased approach using Canary deployment. So how we can achieve it? We can use built-in feature from Traefik that is called load Canary deployment through load balancer services. So let me go to that configuration. And yeah, what I'm doing here, I'm creating again the standard deployment for v2. So the same application, but the different version. And the difference from the UI perspective is just it's just the v1 and v2. So we should expect v2 here once we deploy that service. Okay, so let's see what is how we are going to use with a Canary approach. So we created a specific service that is abstraction layer on the load balancing, and it's a weighted service. And we use what we would love to do here. We have two services, web app v1 and web app v2, and we have a weights here. And there are 3, and there are another weight. It's 1. So Of course, you can use a much bigger numbers here, but it's just an example. And we are, once we deploy it, once we go to our website, we will be randomly redirected to version 2, but we will not have any influence how to reach V2. But in a second, I will show you how to can use headers to manipulate that request. So let me just deploy it. Here, apply. Okay, it's deployed. Let's see what's changed in the dashboard. So, and we have a new routing that defined. I will just explain you what does that header means, but in a second. Something has been defined. Let's go to services, and we see that there is a new service created that is called weighted. And now we can visualize our configuration. So we know that between those two services, using those weights, the request will be balanced. So let me go to the demo application and let me try to refresh it. I don't have right now any influence on it, how to when I will reach V2, but let me try it. V1, yeah, V2. So now we are hitting the version 2, but how to test version 2? Because let's say we have a QA in our team and we would like to ask our colleagues, guys, can you go to the V2 and run your smoke test, right? Run your integrate test, whatever you already have prepared to test your application. So how to do that? Let me show you a little of configuration. So I created a middleware that is called Let Me In, and I use it. It's pretty simple. It's just using the HTTP headers. So I'm using I'm creating a custom request header using the middleware, and the name of that header is Canary header knock knock. And in the response, I would like to get just a hello there. And now I'm creating the new ingress route, and I'm using two matching rules. Excuse me, two matching rules. The first matching rule, it's HTTP host, so still CLabs Canary EU, but in the request, I'm going to send that header. So that key, that value. And I'm assigning the middleware let me in, and I'm redirecting directly to V2. So every time when I send the request by adding that header, I should be always redirected to V2. So I can tell my QA team right now, guys, go to the CLabs Canary EU, add that extra header to your HTTP request, and you are able to test the application. So let me see whether it works as I just explained. So it's Carl comment. Let me make it a little bigger. So we are adding the extra header knock knock, and we are sending request to CLabs Canary EU. So let's review the headers. Yes, so we are adding Canary header knock knock to the request. So CUR works correctly. Now we are expecting in response, the header I just created. So here is the header, the Traefik sent back to us. So my middleware works as I expected. And now I should expect to see V2 in the body, in the response of the body. So yeah, it's HTML, so I just grab for V2, and yes, that's V2. Let me run it once again, still V2. Yeah, so it works correctly. Every time once I'm sending that specific request with that header, I'm always redirected to the newest version. So now we have the two versions of the app deployed and released. And now if everything is fine, we can move to the we can replace V1 to V2. But of course, it's lab environment. It's just an example. Of course, in production, you need to create any CI, CD for that, any automation for it. Nobody is going to manage manually. Just an example what you can do with Traefik. Yes, I think it's all about the demonstration. Let me back to my presentation. Demo time, yeah. So as I presented you UI that you can use for visualize and configuration, the Canary deployment, mirroring, we can just briefly go through it if you have the time. Yeah, we have 7 minutes. So it's pretty simple. So again, as we see, we have we can use a specific service that is called mirroring, and we are sending requests between two services. I haven't tested yet that configuration. This is just an example that you can use also the mirroring from Traefik. Okay, so what are the benefits of Traefik? Let's just briefly summarize. First of all, it's a dynamic configuration. You don't have to write anything, any YAML files. You are just creating a configuration. Once you create new routing rule, it will be automatically discovered by your infrastructure, by Traefik, and the magic will happen inside the Traefik. So it's easy and pretty straightforward configuration. You can use for HTTP, which should be the most common use case, but you can also use different protocols. It's easily integrated with Let's Encrypt, but remember you need to deal with a high availability if you are going to use open source version, because in version 2 there are no possibility to use them to scale the storage. That is that keeps the state. It's stateful application for that case. It's one single binary. So if you have an old environment, you don't have, let's say, Docker installed there, you can still just run the binary. And I have one of our customer use very old Linux. It cannot be upgraded because of some regulation there. And we just installed the Traefik, and it's a Go static binary, so you can easily run using any supervisor to making sure that application is up and running. So you can still use it in the old-fashioned environments. It allows you to use a tracing, so you can trace a request, you can expose your metrics, and of course you can do the rolling updates releases that I just presented, and middlewares. And there are a few already created, but in the future you will be able to code your own middlewares, so you can do a lot of tweaking of your requests. A few benefits of Canary deployment. So you can use even on Kubernetes that I presented at K3S, and also on Docker Swarm. You can find my recording when I presented the same thing on Swarm. Why to use Canary deployment? It's, first of all, you can validate your application in a real production environment. You don't have to create many staging testing environments. Of course, all of them should be coherent. We know about it, but it's difficult to keep environments coherent. I never seen the same environments from staging. Always staging has just one server, and it's just for local tests. You cannot test your application. Build the same environment for testing to have a similar environment to production. So it's nice that you can presentation. The code that they presented is running on that link. Thank you very much. This is all for what I presented for today.
Okay. Jakub, thank you very much for a great presentation.
Yes, so let me start from the easiest way. Yes, the presentation will be available. Of course, the code is already available, so you can check the code. I haven't compared Traefik to Glue because I haven't tested Glue. And there are a lot of different ingress controllers, but Traefik it just works, and I like it because it's simple. Yeah, you can use a Twitter, my email address, whatever you like it, and I can try to answer your questions. Thank you so much. Hope you like it.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Thank you.